Give it a minute, okay? You don't have the keyboard up here. How do you answer people? Oh, you
I just talk to him.
Good morning. Well, you weren't expecting to see me, but I'm what you get. Jonathan is here. He's just sick, and he's staying away. He's keeping his distance because I don't want whatever he's got.
Yeah, I'm here. Good morning.
I didn't watch when you talked. Did you check your microphone?
Yeah. I did.
Okay.
I know where it usually set for me, so.
Okay. So we've already got Richie and Michael. And Michael says he wants a refund. I'm offended. But it actually works out because the boys are out of school today. Why are they out of school?
Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Oh, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I decided to take the day off so I could sleep in. And Michael says that they can hear the walking wounded, which is funny because that's how Pastor Todd referred to the worship team yesterday as we came off a stage.
The walking wounded.
We were the walking wounded, or the old and fragile would probably be closer. So I took the day off, and it's definitely a good day to take off since Jonathan's sick, and the weather is unkind. Michael, we definitely want some of your warmth over here.
Yeah, if you live around where us and Richie do, it got bitter cold again. Arctic wind. They're calling for negative 20 to negative 30 degree wind chills through 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Ugh,
All
really?
day today. Yeah.
So if you're familiar, I'm banished to the indoors when the weather gets this cold because of my asthma. I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And I actually struggle a little bit inside, so if I struggle today, just know it's because I can't breathe. So, do you want to talk about what you normally do, or you just want to give little inputs where to go?
I mean, I usually on the mornings I show what we're gonna do on the revised common lectionary, but I
That's
don't
funny.
expect you to go through all the switching screens and stuff.
Yeah, that's good because I don't know how to do that.
I haven't taught you that much on the studio yet.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm not the technologically inclined.
But hey, if as we're trying to start to wind up for the Bible study, you could go over the challenge card for the year. It's clipped on the wall. You can just pull it off over on your left.
Michael says he's going to radiate
Some heat.
it over. We finally got rain the last few days. Been needing it.
Yeah,
We got snow.
Even though it's winter time, we're still in a drought here, and especially east central Indiana. There's like this blob that's 20 miles every direction or so where we've got it the worst, and we've been in a drought for a couple of years. Trees are dying and everything.
So, I know weather is definitely kind of the forefront of our focus right now because it's an in-your-face kind of day. But it's important that we switch our focus to make sure that Jesus is our focus. And starting our day out in the Word, especially on these hard days, is even more important to take our focus where it needs to be. And Jonathan was saying that I should talk about the challenge. I was thinking prayer card.
2026 challenge card.
Let's see. There we go. The 2026 challenge card. You're familiar with this if you've been watching. But one thing Jonathan may not have mentioned is that we are going over the different, words are hard, practices this year in the sermon series. And right now we're focused on prayer. Michael, just a 20 milliliter.
20 miles or so.
Oh,
I mean,
radius.
the drought is spread much further, but when you look at the drought maps, the worst of it is right on top of
Okay.
us.
The ml is, I automatically think milliliter.
Yeah.
But right now, like I said, our focus is prayer, and baby is in heat again, so maybe pray for baby. But I can tell you, well, you can give a link, right? Can you give a link to the church service yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, if they go to the church's Facebook or YouTube page, it's in the description of the video. It'll be on the list anyway.
Because Pastor Neil gave a wonderful message yesterday about prayer, and prayer is definitely a good place to start and to help us get our focus where it needs to be, because like he mentioned yesterday, we worship something, and the question is what, who and what are we allowing to be our God in our lives.
Everybody worships something.
And I mean, yesterday it was a good example because I'm going to show my ignorance here, but there was a big game yesterday.
I don't know.
If that's your thing, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. If it's not, you're just as confused as I am. But I think I don't know if it was a championship football game. I don't know. There's also another one tonight. And everyone's really excited about it. So apparently they must be really big games.
Yeah.
And if sports is your thing, I apologize because it's not mine.
Don't click on the link right now, but I'm going to put it in chat for the YouTube video from yesterday's sermon. If you click on it, it'll take you out of this video, but I'll pin it if anybody wants to watch it later. If it'll let me pin it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's pinned, but it's there anyway.
Yeah, it's not pinned.
But a lot of times for the sports people, it's very easy for the sports to become their focus and their God. But more importantly for us non-sports people, and even the sports people, it's very easy to make yourself the center and put yourself before God. And it's a good, I guess, slap in the face maybe, to reminder that you need to
Sometimes we need those slaps in the face.
I'm trying to think what my word is. I haven't had enough coffee. I should have got up earlier and drank more coffee. Take account. I don't know, but look at yourself and make sure your focus is where it needs to be. And
there are a lot of things that try to distract you from God. Be it something that just wants your attention, like sports, like money, like social anything, or there's a lot of things that just try to take you away from it where you don't want to, you know. That's where
the cold.
I make it, yeah, even whether you're sitting there or I'm sitting there whether I'm sick or not. Days I wake up, I don't feel like reading the Bible. I don't feel like having my prayer time. And those are the days that I think I need it the most. You know, I don't watch sports and stuff, but I can see that in other things that I wake up and desire to do, things that want my attention. And that's where I talk often. We intentionally put our time into God. We intentionally wake up and build on that foundation first thing, because so many things want to take us away from that. And our own human condition is so easy to get out of something like studying the Bible 4 days a week, having prayer time every day. I mean, you've got your alarm set even to remind you, because you know that if you leave it up to yourself to have that prayer time every morning, you'll get away from it.
I should probably. I'm glad you said that.
Oh yeah, it's gonna go
It's
off.
gonna go
here
off
in a
here.
couple
So.
minutes. But you know, that's setting that alarm that pops up on your phone screen and tells you to pray every morning. Takes you away from whatever distraction you have and reminds you that you made a commitment to be intentional about this.
And for me, those alarms, actually, Pastor Neil mentioned it too, is because we forget.
Yeah.
And, you know, as we get older, it's getting worse. But I lose track of time all the time. So it's easy for me to forget. And it's kind of funny, my nighttime alarm, because I have my alarm set for 8:14 in the morning and 8:14 in the evening. The significance of that is that 8/14/2027 is our 100-year anniversary at the church. So we're specifically praying for the church, and that God will use us and make it what He wants. And we're making all the changes that we need to so that we'll be the missional church that we should be, and not the church in maintenance where we are right now.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we could see yesterday how the weather is affecting people too, and different things, because it's very easy to let things get in the way. And as someone that suffers with the cold, like I said, I'm banished to the indoors. It's hard for me to get out when it's cold. But I can tell you, a couple years ago, story time, hope you're ready, I went to a ladies' retreat for our district. And I didn't want to go. I paid for it. And everything in me was like, too much. I have too much to do. This is too much. I don't have the time.
And this being a ladies' retreat for the church?
Well, it was the district.
Okay.
All the churches in the district.
Okay.
And I'm like, I'd already paid for it. Otherwise, I would have been like, you know, I'm not going. And then Jonathan says to me, just go. You signed up for it. Because I've told him before, if I don't want to do something, that's probably when I really need to do it. And he's like, go. You're going to have a good time. And I was practically in tears when I left, because I did not want to go. And when I got up there, God was, He was there. It was an absolutely amazing weekend. Came back refreshed and strong relationships with the ladies I went with. And we had some awesome reflection time, and I don't really want to say confession, but it was more, we had some very similar shared life experiences that were very hurtful to us, and we had a lot of healing through that, and it was amazing. And it's funny how God gives us these opportunities and we put roadblocks in front of ourselves. It's like, I mean, because if it was left up to me, I probably wouldn't have went, and I would have missed out on an amazing experience with God. So if you're struggling to sit down and read your Bible, force yourself. Whatever you're struggling with, force yourself to do it.
Be
And
intentional about it.
God will reward you and give you, more than likely, exactly what you need at that moment.
Yeah, I don't want to contradict you or clash with you, but I don't like the force yourself. more, because be willingly intentional about it.
Well, that was more force yourself out of your position.
Yeah.
I don't mean like force yourself to read the Bible. It's more force yourself out of your comfort
'Cause
zone.
something we'll get into, especially with the reading today, oftentimes when God calls us, especially when Christ calls us, he calls us to leave a piece of our life behind.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically in today's reading will be with the fishermen
Mm-hmm.
that become his disciples. But throughout the Bible, from throughout the Old Testament and New Testament, anytime God calls, he calls two things. He doesn't call the idle or the lazy. He calls those who are working. He always calls somebody who's doing something already. And God even talks about the labor, and Christ even tells us, pick up your cross and follow me. God wants people who are working, who are doing something, but he always calls to leave something behind. Sometimes it's temporary, like the shepherds who were watching their flock when the angels came and proclaimed Christ being born. They left their flock and went to see, and then they came back to their flock later. Sometimes it's permanent. Peter, Andrew, James, John, you're going to leave this life and do something for me.
We should probably stop there before we get into the whole thing.
Yeah, I've probably already gave half the discussion for today's reading. But before you do start reading, I want a couple of praise report and testimony. We've all been praying for Lee. We got Lee home on Friday. He's out of the hospital. He's not 100%. He's still struggling quite a bit, but got a long road to go, but we'll get there. He's the pneumonia is pretty much gone, but so that's a praise the Lord. It's less stressful to have him home, even when he's not yet 100%. And then Jimmy, who's on our prayer list, I mentioned when last time I saw him, he could barely talk, he could barely move. It was all because he was in pain. When you could get him to talk, it was about pain. And me and our friend Ron, we right there in the middle of a bowling alley that has a bar on one side and restaurant on the other, right there open publicly. We laid hands on him praying, and some other people joined us. And I told Jimmy that the Bible study's been praying for him too. But I saw him yesterday, and he's doing a lot better at the cost of more medicine. He's getting 3 shots in his back every month, and he's taking Tramadol and fentanyl, but it's helping his pain to the point that he stood up out of his wheelchair and gave me a hug yesterday.
He was all smiles when I came in, so.
He I don't know why that old man, of course, he's another elderly man. He's 85 or 86 years old, but he's always connected with me.
He's your dad.
He sits in his chair, drives around looking at stuff, and then he sees me, and he never doesn't know who I am, and he just glows. But it just blew my mind and brought tears to my eyes when he stood up out of that wheelchair and hugged me yesterday, because of knowing what in the condition he had been. Mm-hmm. But I told him once again that our fellowship, our Bible study is praying for him. He's on our list, and we continue to do so. Mm-hmm. But praise the Lord, he's got some kind of feeling better. He said it's at the cost of a medicine that's dangerous, and I don't like that, but if that's the path that God intends, then that's what we have.
And he is, being realistic, he's ending the end of his life cycle, and
yeah,
at this point it's being comfortable.
That much talking really made my stomach turn. I'm gonna shut up for a while.
Shut up for a while. I mean that in the most loving way.
I know.
But here we are 20 after. We're going to get into the word now. This week we are starting with Matthew. Matthew chapter 4, verses 12 through 23, which Jonathan put on the screen because I sure wouldn't know how to do that. And, oh, maybe this book isn't a good idea. I feel like these words got smaller overnight.
You got older.
Shut up. Once again, I mean that in the most loving way.
Yeah, I know.
So, yeah, I can't. I'm going to have to switch to my Bible app. Bear with me. I'm old and can't see. I think I need new glasses. That's my problem.
I already need stronger ones, which I've got on top of the computer. They're about half a thing stronger.
Has he made it AMP or NIV? I'm not sure what you're asking, Michael.
Well, I usually use the Amplified, but you're probably
Oh.
going to read the New
Yes, I'm going to
International.
read out of the NIV.
But when I talk and comment, I'll comment out of what I read in the Amplified.
Yes, he will be reading along in the Amplified, but he's not allowed to talk much. So.
No.
Okay, so this one is actually titled Jesus Begins to Preach, starting in chapter 12. When Jesus heard that John had been put in prison, he withdrew to Galilee. Leaving Nazareth, he went and lived in Capernaum, which was by the lake in the area of Zebulun and Naphtali, to fulfill what was said through the prophet Isaiah. Land of Zebulun and land of Naphtali, the way of the sea, beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles, the people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. From that time on, Jesus began to preach, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near." As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," Jesus said, "and I will send you out to fish for people." At once they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him.
23.
Oh, my bad. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. I just stopped where the break was.
Yeah.
There's a lot in this section.
Yes, there is.
So we need to go back up to the top.
Yep.
Of course, the John that we're talking about here is John the Baptist. And obviously, Jesus and John had a special relationship. I mean, they knew each other while they were still in their mother's wombs and had that connection.
I think it's interesting in the timeline and the way the different Gospels record it, that Matthew, who's kind of specifically trying to address the Jews, he's picking up things that the Jews would have really known about and thought about, like John the Baptist. So Matthew records this as happening. This is the next thing he tells us about right after the 40 days of temptation. If you read earlier in Matthew 4, Jesus just came out of the 40 days of temptation. But the other Gospels record a little more in different times, and he had actually seen John after the temptation. When we talked last week, when John the Baptist, the second time he saw Jesus, he says, "Behold the Lamb of God," proclaiming him the same way he did before the 40 days of temptation. And also, this is not the first time that Christ went to Galilee. I think the significant thing here is that he, this time, the last couple times or whatever, he passed through Galilee. This time he came and settled there. He lived there, probably rented a house, or someone lent him a house, let him live there. I doubt he bought property, but
More than likely, he would have been either in a church or
Yeah.
with someone else, like
Yeah.
in a room.
What's the house that the church often owns?
Parsonage.
Yeah, like a parsonage, or like ours, where our church is. We have the parsonage for the main pastor, for the lead pastor, and then the other house was 2 apartments. It was meant to be if guest pastors and missionaries and things would come, it's a place they could stay. That's kind of what I think. They lent him a house, had a place for him to live.
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking more like the nuns and how they live. I would have thought it would be more like that, but this is neither here nor there. And Luke the Drifter has joined us. So, hello, Luke.
Good morning, Luke.
Interesting here is also how, like you said, Matthew is going more towards the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Here he pulls in the Old Testament, which would have been just
Yeah.
the Bible. Then
more than any of the other Gospels, Matthew looks at fulfilled prophecy and Jesus.
And I think that's so very helpful for us today because it proves how important the Old Testament is too, not just the New Testament. Because so many people nowadays want to just forget about the Old Testament, but there's so many lessons in the Old Testament and promises. And there's just so much good stuff in there that it kind of makes me sad when people's like, oh, you don't need that anymore. Just read the New Testament. Which the New Testament is important. I'm not saying anything about that, but you can't forget about the Old Testament.
Yeah, and there's a lot of churches and teachers who, like you said, have turned completely away from the Old Testament. But when you study like we do, with that little bit of gospel, little bit of New Testament, little bit of old, little bit of Psalms or poetic or wisdom passages, and when you intentionally look for those connections, you intentionally make those connections between all those areas and looking for those connections with Christ. When you do that so much, it's hard to read any passage in the Old Testament and not see Christ. Mm-hmm. And if you see Christ in that Old Testament, it has all the importance and weight of the New Testament. Mm-hmm. And it really bothers me that so many teachers have turned away from Old Testament, saying it's to study for history and this and that. No, the Old Testament is the story of Christ, who was here before creation and all things created through him, as John chapter 1 says.
And I think back, we had a pastor who used a phrase that has stuck with me, and that was the Jesus lens. You look at life through the Jesus lens, which is trying to find Jesus in everything you do or say or read. And if you have on that Jesus lens, when you're reading the Old Testament, those moments just pop out at you. And it's so helpful to, I mean, obviously, you don't even really need the Jesus lens to see it in the New Testament because it's all Jesus. But when you look at the Old Testament and you have that Jesus lens in, you see it's just as much Jesus. It just doesn't say it. It doesn't point it out with the bright colors. Literally.
And Michael mentions Matthew highlighting Isaiah. Just for interest, next weekend, I believe, or next Wednesday, I believe, we're going to actually read the passage that Matthew is referring to today, so we'll dig into it then.
Okay.
It's on the back page of the book.
Back page of the book?
Of the thing. You'd have to flip the next page over.
It's like there's nothing. The back page. Okay.
So John the Baptist has been tossed in jail, which we talked quite a bit about that over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
And
I like the imagery that Isaiah uses, and that's something we see so often with the prophets, is the imagery they use, and it helps you form, if you can, that mental picture. I know you don't see pictures, and I apologize. So for all the normal people out there, because people living in the darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. And that's for the Gentiles, because they were never allowed to be a part. They were always the outsiders. But here we have Jesus saying, or I guess Isaiah hinting at the idea that Jesus is going to be the one that helps them come to him. That division isn't there. Because, I mean, we're Gentiles. We weren't raised Jewish. I only know one Jewish person, so we'd be out of luck there. But this is another promise from the Old Testament coming true with the person that is Jesus.
And Jesus bringing in the Gentiles, it was to tear that veil, to show the Jews that throughout even the Old Testament, God had always wanted the Gentiles in. He had many times, several said he was the God of all the nations, and when prophecies were made about Christ, he was coming for the salvation of all, and to carry the sin of the world, not just the sin of the Jews. But the Jews had separated themselves. It was such, and it went both ways. The Gentiles didn't like the Jews anymore, and the Jews didn't like the Gentiles. But a lot of that came from the Jews separating themselves and saying, God hates you people. He loves us, and when he comes, he's just going to take care of us, and that kind of stuff. And part of why Jesus, not part of why he came, but part of his mission, part of his preaching was that, hey, this is what God has always wanted. So God intentionally put him there in this place, in Gentile Galilee. And it's funny how often throughout history, like, governments will unknowingly and unintentionally help fulfill prophecy. Under the tetrarchy of Herod, they had pushed many of the Gentiles into this area of Galilee, which Josephus, what do you call Josephus?
The guy, Josephus.
Yeah, like the researcher, studier, wrote a whole lot about early Christianity.
Historian, maybe?
Yeah, historian, there we go.
Words are hard, I told you.
In his writing about this area of Gentile Galilee that Jesus went to live in, there ended up being like 3 million Gentiles, and most of the Jews had left, but it was extremely fertile land, and they had all these little towns and cities, perfect setup for Christ to go preach here today, and the next town is less than a day's walk away, and he can go preach here, and then the next town is less than a day's walk away, and he can go, and really spread that news through literally millions of people. If he had went and set up his ministry in Jerusalem, and standing there at the temple and the synagogues in Jerusalem and preaching, they'd have just, for the most part, he'd have been ignored, because you got a guy standing here just like someone else always stands here preaching the word, and they just assume it's another preacher droning it out when you're in a big metropolis like that, and they would tend to ignore him. So
they would tend to ignore him because he was teaching
against
much
because of his message too. But yeah, you think about it, on the surface, it would make more sense for Christ to go live in Jerusalem because he's the Messiah coming to save them. But it actually much, much more with the plan of God to go to this area that has many, many small towns and quickly spreading that news to millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
And people who were hungry, they were in the darkness.
Right.
Because they had been shut off from the Jews.
And we can see that today. Because I like to bring the passage to today and what we can learn about it now. We don't have as much of a division between the Jew and the Gentiles, but we have division everywhere we look. There's something out there dividing us from everyone we walk by. But we're made to be different. We're made to be weird, like I like to say. And because we don't have that division, we don't need to see those differences, because what we have is a God that unites us. And it's our mission to go out and share the love that we have, that we've found with others. So when I see the people living in a darkness have seen a great light, they can see that through us. When God's love and light shines through us to all the areas we go through. It's not us, but it's the God through us that we can do these things. And we can love on people and share God's message and the love of Jesus with everyone, no matter how different they are than us, because everyone's different. We have a million reasons why we shouldn't talk to that person, but we have one that makes it important to talk to that person.
You know, I like when we talk about spreading that light to other people and Him shining through us. You know, when we talk about being the embodiment of Christ in our sphere of influence and putting Him on and wearing Him, and we talk about literally Him being the lamp into our feet, the light into our path. When we talk about that often, we don't often mention, but when He is a light into your path, when He is truly a light into your path, you're not the only one that can see that light. Mm-hmm. You spread that to other people around you, and they start wanting that, and they start wanting to be in that light until they make him their light, and then their light shines, and other people outside of our sphere of influence, but in theirs, start to see that light. Same thing, and it just draws more and more people. But we share that light with Him, with others, just by living as disciples of Christ.
And I think of the example, I know we've shared it before, but of Gideon. When my coworker's son is a dispatcher, and he was the dispatcher when an officer was killed in an accident. And his immediate thought was, well, first we need to pray for him, and second, I need to make a card for him. And I'm like, all right, you do that, I'll make sure he gets it. And that card broke that man. And not in a bad way, but just the words. And it was one that I was kind of like, I'm not sure you should say that. But, because right at the top he says, it's not your fault. And those words were huge for him. And he told me that he just bawled like a baby when he read it. And since that time, he's finding different ways to connect with Gideon. And it's just, it doesn't make sense to him that a child would think to do something like this and it have such an impact on him. But we know what's in that little boy's heart. Mm-hmm. And we know that he was just following what God wanted him to do. And now we're just hopeful that with his leading, that will lead that person to Christ, because he's not a follower of Christ. So the difference definitely stands out to him, because he sees the worst of the worst. He's some sort of magnet for like the worst days at dispatch. Like his first weekend, there was 4 murders in town. And and it seems to be, if something odd or weird or bad is going to happen on a shift, it's his shift. But he's seeing that this little boy can see him for who he is and what he's going through. But it's not this little boy that sees it. It's this little boy that's giving him the message from his God. And he's faithful in his following. And that's just a small example of a childlike thing. And if a child can have this much in this much of an impact in a small card, how much of an impact can we have with a conversation? And it's important to just follow that tugging that God puts on your heart and get out of your comfort zone and talk to that person that God's saying, go talk to them, tell them about me, or just love on them and open the door. Just be faithful. So, I hope you're keeping track of the conversation.
I'm trying to right now. I'm trying not to run off and throw up.
Okay, well.
Sorry.
It's okay. So we're going to continue on. And Jesus began to preach, repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near. Did you want to say something? You're just breathing.
That should sound very familiar because he picks up John's message. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting because in John's testimony of Christ, which we talked about more last week, I don't think we got to the part, but John says, I must decrease so he can increase. John gets thrown in jail, and the first thing Jesus does is go to the area where John was mm-hmm. and starts with the message John left off with.
And it's, I don't know, I kind of see a double meaning here too, which you can see a lot of with what Jesus, typically whatever Jesus says, there's more than one meaning to it. Yeah. You've got the surface level and then you've got a deeper, but the kingdom of heaven has come near. First of all, it's him. He's there, but also it's their chance to go to heaven as well. It's their invitation, so to speak. Did you want to add anything before I get into the disciples? Because that's where my main thought process was.
I mean, repentance, that's something we cover quite often.
It's that one thing you need to do.
Changing your inner self, desiring. We're going to talk a little bit about leaving your old life behind here when we get into the disciples, but desiring to leave those old things behind. Desiring, because you come to faith, you start realizing, you start seeing the things in your life that are separating you from God. Mm-hmm. Seeing those doesn't take them away. Desiring to turn from those, to run from those, to in the Amplified, it defines repent as change your inner self and your old way of thinking, regret past sins, live your life in a way that proves repentance and seeking God's purpose for your life.
The regret past sins, that's a slippery slope.
Because you can take regret too far.
Right. And you can also learn from them and perhaps prevent others from following down that path. Mm-hmm. I know as parents, we hope that our children will learn from our mistakes and not make those same mistakes themselves. Because we did it so gloriously well that we thoroughly investigated that sin, and we need to make sure that, hey, you don't need to figure this out on your own. I did it. Find your own path, and maybe don't make this mistake because that's not the path for you. Unfortunately, sometimes our children still need to go down that path, and we just hope that maybe they won't. But anyway, I would like to get into Jesus calling the disciples because it's one of my favorite things. And one thing, it was a little different time then, because you're thinking, why will these people just drop everything to follow this man and not look back? Well, in that time, there was a hierarchy. See, I'm hitting the microphone. And you know how I feel about the word hierarchy. Of professions, especially for the Jew.
Very much like the caste system that still exists in like India and stuff.
And at a young age, my words are really struggling. The best thing that your child could be chosen from, and of course in this time it would have been your son, would be an apprentice for a rabbi. And that was the greatest thing. The greatest honor for any father was that his son was chosen by the rabbi.
And it was a huge thing, much more than we give it credit for, I think, because especially in that time, there's no public schools, there's no private schools really, there's no colleges. If your child was chosen to follow a rabbi, to be a disciple of a rabbi, you were guaranteed your child was going to get an education that was probably way better than the education you ever had. That was, it was a very, from a parent's point of view, we often don't look at it from that point of view, but from a parent's point of view, that was a great thing to happen.
And I mean,
so Zebedee especially, he was,
we're not too Zebedee
I know,
yet.
we're not there yet. Go ahead.
Slow your roll.
I need to, because I'm not doing well.
I got to bring in one of my musicals, because I love musicals. Fiddler on the Roof. The greatest thing for a father of daughters was that her daughter could marry the rabbi or his son, who was generally his apprentice. More so than the doctor. And you would think that, the doctor would be the one. But no, it was the rabbi. And so here we have these men who were adults. So they lost their chance. They couldn't be the chosen of the rabbi because they were too old. They're normally chosen like around 12.
So not really adults in our eyes, like mid to late teenagers. They're still kids in our society.
But not their society.
Then they were,
Yeah. For us, totally, they're
kids.
Little young kids.
Other than Peter. Peter's old.
But for their time period, their prime was over. They'd lost their chance to be chosen and bring honor to their family. So here, Jesus is saying, come follow me. And they're like, absolutely. And they didn't even realize how awesome the journey they were about to go on was. They just knew that they were going to be able to do what they'd always wanted to do.
I bet you the first two, Andrew and Peter, they probably rejoiced jumping out of the boat because they had already met Jesus. Andrew and Peter Andrew was one of the disciples of John the Baptist that John sent to follow Jesus, go spend the day with him. And Andrew got so excited about what he saw in Jesus that he immediately went and got his brother Peter. And they came, and where Jesus was staying that day, they stayed with him all day. So Andrew and Peter had already met Jesus. And, after spending that time with Christ, just knowing Andrew was so excited about Christ that he went and got his brother. After spending that time with Christ, it was probably kind of depressing that they had to go away.
Mm-hmm.
So now, here this Jesus comes back into their area, not just to preach to them, but to say, hey, you two, you're mine now.
Me.
If you want,
Mm-hmm.
follow me seems like a command, but it's a be willingly follow me wherever you want to go type thing.
But also, follow me is you don't look back.
Yeah.
You're follow me, but it's up to you if you're going to follow me or not. I'm not going to drag you along.
But yeah, if I was in Andrew's shoes, I'd have probably jumped out of that boat shouting for joy,
But even still,
having already experienced Christ.
But even the experience they had, they still had no clue what was yet to come.
They had no idea what was coming.
And they were excited for what they'd seen,
Yeah.
but they had so much more coming, and they really had no clue. Even though they were excited and ready to go, they couldn't, there's no way they could have known what they were about to get into. And so much more than they could have even dreamed.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I do like once again, the imagery of fish for, this says people, but
yeah.
Normally it says men.
I will make you fishers
of men. And because that was their profession, was fishing. And he's saying, I'm going to take what you know and help you use it for God's kingdom. And that's something that God does all the time. He takes our strengths and says, hey, take that and use that here. I'm going to use that here. And I think of me and Pearson. We both have the knowledge of financial accounting and stuff. And here we take it from our secular jobs and use it in the church. And we find ways to, take from the budget, we don't need this much here. We can do this here. And God's saying, use this. And we're like, can we just work here?
God often calls you to change. He calls you to leave things behind, but he doesn't necessarily call you to leave your skill set behind.
Use your skill set in a different way.
I want to take your skill set and mold it into something awesome. May not be, especially thinking about the fishermen in this area of Galilee. They weren't unimportant. The fishermen would have been wealthy families. I mean, wealthy enough that they had hired people even. And so it's not like they were leaving this poor, lowly position to go follow Christ and use their skills for him. I mean, for anyone else, it would have been a big decision. Do I give up my money and go work for the church? But Christ is saying, hey, I'm going to use your skill set. Yeah, you're going to have to give up your old life. You're going to have to give up all that wealth you were making. They may not have understood how, as disciples of Christ, they were generally, I don't like to say poor, but in poverty. They weren't walking around with a lot of bags full of money. They had one guy that did the accounting, but he will always use your skill set for something for him. Even if you have to leave behind your life, he brings your abilities.
That's something.
And that's something I think Richie knows well. If Richie's with us this morning, I didn't see.
He's busy, but he's trying to pop in when he can.
Your abilities and your experiences from that past life.
And that's something I'm working on right now with my basic life skills courses, because I haven't led one yet. But everyone keeps asking. It's common.
They keep asking me to do mine again.
But the point is to take someone already with the church that has a skill and teach it to the others. And because sometimes we forget we have this skill and we don't think twice about it. Like my sewing. Someone says, I have this hole, can you fix it? I'm like, yeah, let's sew this up. But then someone looks at me and it's like, can you teach me that? I'm like, oh yeah, not everyone learned this. And I mean, I learned that when I was doing sewing as my job. My greatest asked question was to sew on a button. I'm like, how do you not know how to sew on a button? But that's the thing. God gives us these talents, and a lot of times we don't even think about it. And then he gives us this opportunity to share it with others. And there he's saying, I gave you this, now use it. Use it in a way that you weren't thinking about. And it's a chance to use that thing in a different way, but you're doing it to help further God's kingdom. You're helping these people learn to do something so they're not spending the money for someone else to do it, and then they can use that money to help further God's kingdom, because that's what they typically do. We, as Christians, we try to give to the church when we can and give extra when we can, and there's our chance. We're not just helping monetarily, we're helping with a skill and helping someone else become more solvent in their lives. So as we're running out of time, we got to get into Zebedee.
We're not running out of time. We can go to like 20 after 9, but
I know, but it's Zebedee. So
bring it.
So next we have, going on from there, he saw 2 other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. And they were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. So the mention of the father, it doesn't say what he did. And, current time, you would think that father would have tried to stop them. Like, no, I need your help here with the boat.
The family business.
How am I supposed to do this without you? Well, he probably had like 10 other kids anyway. But
Zebedee's family is one that we know in other places they had hired workers. But still, wanting to pass on the legacy of the business is a huge thing to some people.
But I think, and I really wish that he would have spent some time on Zebedee, because as a parent, Zebedee, we didn't ask you. Zebedee not only got to see one of his sons be chosen, he got to see 2. And that didn't happen. So the honor and glory that Zebedee would have felt as a father, knowing that his children were chosen, both of them, not just one, both. Honestly, that man was probably sobbing like a baby on the deck of that boat. And he probably didn't even go fishing that day. But you know what? I bet everyone in that town that day knew that Jesus had chosen his sons. And probably the surrounding towns too.
I can tell you, as a father of 3 sons, that I can't say I know exactly what Zebedee went through, because Christ has never been there before us. But sitting there, that pride, that welling up with tears when my 3 children decided to get baptized and made their confession in front of all the congregation, and
on our anniversary.
But even beyond just within the church group, when my children, when they see an accident and the first thing out of their mouth is, we need to pray, or when Gideon hears about that man and the first thing, I need to make him a card. Seeing the children do that and to make that decision. Zebedee didn't sit there and tell his sons to go, nor did he sit there and tell them to stay. He's it's almost like he sits back and like, let's see what they do.
What
here.
are they going to do?
And to know that they enthusiastically go to this rabbi, yeah, I can kind of know where he's feeling there. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, when I watched my children decide to get baptized, and each of them read their own testimony, their own witness of God that they had written or they had come up with before their baptism, that was my Zebedee moment for my children, with being a father of those children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just, it's so easy as a parent to put yourself in Zebedee's place. And I know there's some people that would be like, well, he'd be sad because his kids just left, but I don't think there would have been any sadness at all in that man. I mean, I'm sure momentarily now and then just missing his sons, but
Yeah.
knowing that they just received the highest calling that a person could receive. And even now, that's the highest calling that a person could receive, is to be a follower of Jesus. And, but I can just, I know it's such a short paragraph, but you can just feel the joy and the love and the happiness jumping off this page, that because, like I said, not just one of Zebedee's children were chosen, but two. And it makes mention throughout the Bible multiple times, the sons of Zebedee. And so here, even in his time and historically thereafter, Zebedee is remembered because God chose his children. So that says something about Zebedee himself. He wasn't preventing his children from learning, but he was pouring into them, making sure that they knew the path to follow, so that when they had the option, they jumped at it. They knew right from wrong, and they knew that Jesus was the answer. 100%. And I know you said the boys being baptized, but I think of a moment when I see them showing the love of Jesus to others is my proud moment. Like Caleb with the boy that was being made fun of at school. He was in a younger grade, and typically you sat with your grade and there wasn't any diversion from that. And no one would let this kid sit with him. And Caleb's like, hey, sit here. And then he stood up for him time and time again. And even to the point where he went to the leaders in the school and said, hey, this is happening. It only happens when you're not around, but it is happening and you need to do something about it. And they did. And now that kid, he still has moments, because, the teachers can't be watching all the time, but more and more he's being accepted. And it started with my son reaching out and saying, hey, I got you. I'll help you. And here, Zebedee had this huge moment where his sons chose to do the right thing. And as a parent, that's our goal, is that our children will choose the right path. And to just watch them, without question, jump out of that boat. Because I'm sure there wasn't no just climbing. I'm sure they just jumped out of that boat and said, let's go. And
Although I still think Andrew and Peter's reaction was probably more.
oh, yeah,
excitement.
absolutely. That's why I'm
But,
focusing more on
yeah,
Zebedee,
yeah.
because yes, the
We-
boys would have been excited, but not as much as Zebedee.
Yeah, the proud parent moment of this, because it's funny because we don't hear about. Well, I guess when we first meet Andrew, it gives his father's name, but we don't hear much about like Andrew and Peter's father. What
And that's
did he
another
think about
point
it?
here.
Zebedee, his reaction, whatever it was, which we don't get the whole story. Just like this whole passage says, he went throughout these towns preaching and healing, and we don't get each and every one of those moments, each and every one of those stories. We also don't We don't get the entirety of Zebedee's reaction, but if he's included and stuck with and even remembered, there was something great in how he handled this situation.
Or even more so before then. Just like Mary, she was chosen because of how she was. So Zebedee, he's mentioned because of who he was and what he taught and how he lived his life. And interesting, I think it's very interesting that the very next thing is the healings. Because he's saying, hey, come with me, and now watch this.
I before the healings, I don't know exactly how the the NIV put it.
Teaching.
Yeah, most of it's the preaching, and the healing and the casting out demons. That's something that we can spend a whole show on. But I think it's important that first and foremost, all of the gospel writers, when they talk about Christ and the things he did, they always mention the preaching first. It was sharing the word. Well, preaching and teaching go hand in hand. Preaching is standing on this word, being, like being witness to God, and then teaching is turning around and explaining it. But they always mention the preaching and the teaching first. Christ came to share the good news. The healing and the casting out demons and that was all secondary, but also with great purpose. But first and foremost, he was a teacher. He was preaching. He was spreading the good news.
But with the healing, that's like teaching in action. Because he says the words, he explains it all, and then he shows them how to do it. You follow me and trust. Because the people couldn't be healed if they didn't have faith. And they needed to believe. And here they're putting their faith where... Yeah, I just lost my thought. But I know it's not here, but I think of the soldier where he's like, heal him for me. Or, I know you can heal him. He's like, I'll go to your house.
The centurion whose son was sick.
And he's like, no, you don't need to come to my house. I know. You say the word and it's done. And then Jesus is like, that's faith. And I'm sure that was a huge moment there for the people around him, because he'd be like a teaching moment. It's like, hey, you see this? This is what we're talking about. This guy knows that just by me saying it, it's done. He's not questioning. He's faithful in he believes 100%. I say it, it's done. That's the type of faith you need. And that's the type of faith we need. God says over and over again, he's going to do this thing. Why are we still questioning him? Just be patient. It'll happen. God will do the thing that he's promised us he'll do. But I do think it's important that he mentions the healings. Because for me, I think of the healings as removing stumbling blocks. Because those people were being held back by a disease, an illness, a physical deformity, whatever. They were being held back. Because they didn't have the things that we have today. If the guy's missing a leg, he's not just going to go in a wheelchair. I mean, he's got to rely on other people to help him. I mean, I know they had some rudimentary things, but he couldn't just go on his own.
Yeah.
I mean, but
oftentimes someone with that bad of a deformity or injury or whatever, they would, if they had the strength, they'd get around on one crutch.
yeah.
But otherwise, they had people carrying them basically gurneys. I can't think of the name of it, but and it even talks about that
The
the
mats.
lame and the others who were carried in, but that requires effort and ability from other people, and your needs wouldn't be met that well. But I think part of the importance of the healing with Jesus' ministry and why we see it so much and why we see the casting out demons and things so much, it's because that's, unfortunately, even though spreading the good news was the most important thing Jesus did, on the human side of things, the healing and the casting out demons is what was going to stick with people. When they go tell their friends, they're going to start with, dude, this guy came and there was a leper and boom, his skin was clean and oh my goodness. And he also preached about this stuff and told us these things. But what's going to stick with the people, what's going to spread his message is the action before the words, even though the words were the most important. But yeah, and that's why I think we see so much of the healing, so much of the casting out demons when Christ was here. He tells us we have the same power, but we've never seen anyone since who needs to or goes out and uses that same power at the same frequency that Christ did. But there's not so much a need for that as there was then.
Well, even today we can see what draws people in is that change in a person.
Yeah.
You can still call it a healing because you're being healed from the effects of sin on your life. And when you see someone do a complete 180, it's like, hey, check out this person here. I'll use Richie. Look at Richie. Man, he's a completely different guy now. Maybe there's something to this God thing that he's talking about. And so they see that thing that they can see, and then they'll listen. So with the healings, that was the imagery. That was the visual lesson that the people needed to see that this guy isn't just words. He's actions. And, it wasn't just magic. This wasn't a temporary thing for these people. That suddenly this person could walk 2 steps and then they were back to the way they were. No, this person is completely healed and better and made whole by this Jesus person that has a different teaching than what we've heard. So maybe there's something to this teaching that makes him different. And we need to grab onto that and listen and see if maybe there is something to this. And so I mean, obviously there's importance to the healing. That's why it's mentioned so often. And I mean, you make a good point too. It is of course second to the teaching, but the teachings aren't gonna stick without that lesson. It's like the pictures in a book, especially the young ones. You got to have the pictures in the book or they're not going to pay attention. Now we have books without pictures as we get older, but as we're older and reading a book and suddenly there's a picture, you're like, oh, I need to pay attention to that. That's different. So it's just it's an illustration in the book that Jesus is teaching. Here's this picture and a way that you can use it in your daily life. But take my teaching and use it. Grab onto it, and you can do this stuff too.
That's an awesome comparison. I've never thought of it that way before, to compare the healings and the casting out demons and stuff as the pictures within a book. And I've never thought about it that way. That's good. That's good. I like that.
I'm a visual person.
And I'm not.
That's why we need community. So, it's 9:14 now.
Do you read Richie's comment?
No.
It's funny you used me. I was with a group of friends yesterday, There was a long conversation about me not being the same person I used to be. That's exactly what you just brought up.
Yeah, and that's great because what better example can you be than, or can you have than for people to see how different you are? And yeah, being with a group of friends, they knew the old Richie. And the hard part is when that group of friends liked the old Richie and then they're not your friends anymore because they don't like the new Richie.
Yeah.
But hopefully they still come around.
When you have that
Yeah.
time where you jump out of the boat and follow him, you know, leaving leaving your old life behind but retaining your skills. Sometimes your old life includes some of the people that were in your life.
I'd say most times.
Sometimes, yeah, most times. You're going to lose people. They're not going to like the new you. They wanted the carnal you. They wanted the pagan you, the fun times you know.
They wanted the you that said that their sins are okay.
And you'll start, for some of them will stay in your life, and it's kind of intentional for you to share that light, share that gospel, the good news, share Christ with them. But others, you'll start to see that they're not going to be part of it. They're going to be kind of the ones who are truly lost, who are turn their back on him, and you're going to start thinking, well, I kind of feel like I'm casting my pearls to swine, but you don't have to let them go, because often they'll just leave on their own.
Yeah.
When they can't get the old you back, they leave your life. So
Generally making you the bad person.
You do tend to lose a lot of people when you come to Christ.
But there again,
but you gain a whole lot of people.
That, but also with Christ or any tragedy that you go through, you find out who your friends are. Mm-hmm. And I think of Brooke. I've been friends with Brooke since kindergarten, and she's always been there. We've been through all the ups and downs of our lives, and I think one of the hardest conversations I ever had to have with her was when I told her right before I preached the sermon that I was in an abusive marriage and that I was going to take my life. It broke her because she didn't see it. I was like, Brooke, this has nothing against you. I hid it from you because I knew you were a good enough friend that you would stop me. And that's something we have to look out for too, is the people that are hurting, especially the ones that are closest to us, they'll hide things from us. And we got to watch out for that. They're not hiding it necessarily to be spiteful. It's because they're hurting and they don't want to hurt us in the process. So watch out for your hurting friends, and especially the friends that start getting distant. Sometimes it's because they need to go away because they're not for you, but sometimes it's because they need you more and they're hurting. That's neither here nor there, but that was my squirrel. Richie's. Absolutely. The people you think are your closest friends, when they shun you, it's definitely a slap in the face, because you're like, I put all this time and effort into this friendship and you didn't even care about me. You just cared about what I could give you. But, yeah. So, it's that time of day.
I say it's probably about time to...
We've had plenty of squirrel moments, and I just realized I've been shuffling my book, so if you're hearing this background noise, I apologize.
A lot of times I tap the desk and stuff.
So definitely pray for Jonathan. And I'm probably going to quarantine him in the bedroom. And we pray that he's feeling better, because I won't be here tomorrow to help.
Yeah.
But I will be here Wednesday, so you get me 2 days this week.
Today, because of being sick, because of the weather, because of everything else, today is really going to be a day of rest. And it's funny, I talked about it last week on here. Like, I've got this today and that tomorrow, and then the next day and the next day, and all the way through Sunday, and I'll rest next week.
And God says, yes, you will.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, if I hadn't have been sick, and if this polar vortex hadn't have moved in and everything else, I'd have just kept on going.
And here Jonathan is showing us the lesson of Sabbath. If you do not take Sabbath on your own, illness and injury will become your Sabbath.
At some point, he says, hey, you're going to rest.
God commands us to take our Sabbath, and if we don't listen, he will make it for us. So, pray for Jonathan that he learns his lesson this time and does better about taking his Sabbath.
I appreciate that.
And there's Gideon popped up. We were talking about you.
Was it bad or good?
It was good. You're a good kid, buddy. Don't get too close to me.
Yeah, stay away from your father. He's in quarantine. Yeah. But anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, that you are blessed in all that you do. You share the love of Jesus with all you encounter, and let his light shine through you into the darkness of this world. Is there anything you would like to add, my love?
No, not really today.
Okay, you're good. Stop talking. But you all have a blessed day, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Lord willing. What? Oh.
I was just going to tell you, if you want to leave the chat run for a little bit, just go to the bottom of the list on the left-hand side, hit end screen, the one at the bottom. But sign off before you do, because that cuts your microphone, cameras, and everything.
So I'm going to figure out what Jonathan is talking about, and I'll leave the chat running for a few minutes so y'all can say your farewells and whatnot, and add any more input that you would like.
And continue conversations.
Yep, continue conversations.
I don't shut it off until it's down to nobody talking.
Yep, we'll keep it going till y'all are finished. And as always, you can join us on Discord and continue or start a conversation there. So you all have a blessed day.
Love you all.
We love you all. And we'll see you again, hopefully tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I'll be here. One way or another, I'll be here.
Okay. On the left-hand side of the screen.
Left hand all the way to the bottom. End
Ending?
screen. Yep, that pulls up the prayer challenge.